Okay, it says we are live. Hello, everyone. Hey, guys, welcome back to my regular Wednesday night live stream. Hello, Twitch. Hello, DLive and YouTube. On today's show, we have a politician as well as a freedom fighter, and I think I could dare say possibly even an Australian hero. He is one of the few that is looking out for us and reasserting Australia's laws and informing the masses of vital information that seems to be omitted. Mysterious as that is. So before I bring him on, today's traditional Bible reading comes from the book of Hebrews, chapter 12, verse 3. For consider him that endured such contradiction of sinners against himself, lest ye be wearied and faint in your minds. We may be suffering, and we certainly are compared to a former Australia and what we're used to, but just remember, someone already bore those burdens for us. Okay, the following interview is not intended to offer misinformation, and it is strongly suggested that you do your own research. I only say that because of the YouTube overlords. All right, let's bring on our very special guest, Senator Malcolm Roberts. Hello.
Hi there, Adia. It's a lovely introduction, and what an appropriate verse from the Bible. Fabulous.
Thank you. Yeah, I always hunt down ones that I find relevant for us. I actually had a different one in mind. The one I was going to read was "Consider him in everything you do," but that's a paraphrase, and I couldn't find it. So I settled for that one because it's still relatively relevant, and well, really, pretty much everything in the Bible is relevant to today's day and age. You are, I assume, from the mini conversation we just had prior to this, you're a Christian.
Yes, but I don't go to church.
I don't either. Not lately.
Most churches have lost their relevance. When I was in boarding school, I used to stay in twice a term. We'd have a boarders weekend, and you could go out and stay the whole weekend with a family friend. And so we'd stay with family friends. And after about one or two of them, I thought, hang on, there's hardly anybody left in the boarding house. What a wonderful time to be totally free. So I would stay in for those weekends. And on those weekends, we'd take it in turns to go to different churches because it'd just be a small group, right? My dad had me down as a Methodist. And so one day I went to the Presbyterian church, the big one, St. Andrews, I think it was, in Brisbane, and listened to the preacher there. And I changed as a result of that. I go where the preacher is most relevant and most effective and most helpful. So
I love that.
And then when I came back from America, I went wherever I moved to a new town. I used to go to church then. I would go 4 weeks to the Catholics, 4 weeks to the Anglicans, 4 weeks to the Presbyterians, 4 weeks to the Methodists, and then work out which one I wanted. But I don't go to any of them now.
No, and I think the problem, that's very poignant you say that, because I'm finding that I'm quite frustrated with Christians at the moment, and predominantly with churches, because they no longer are biblical. Like, I want to go to a biblical church. Now, the church I was raised in was Brethren, so you can imagine how strict that was. Like, you weren't allowed to wear makeup, and even like when we pray, like it was, how the Muslim women wear things on their heads. When we pray, we had to have a headscarf on. It was no. Yeah, so I came from very legalistic church upbringing to now noticing that churches are okay with abortion, and some Methodists even permit same-sex marriage, and I'm like, you're not. No. Yes, love the sinner, love the gay man, don't wish death upon him, don't be a dick to them, but no, you can't condone those things. You cannot change an old book. Yeah, it's not what I intended to talk to you about at all, actually, but I'm glad that it is a good topic.
Yeah, it is important, though, dear, because
isn't it?
There's so many. The churches used to stand up for the principles,
yes,
and freedom. Now they're just so woke. Even the Catholic Church used to hold out on many of these things, but even it's become woke in so many fields, and that's destroying freedom of speech. When they bow down, I mean, look at the man they supposedly worship, or the principles that he taught. They don't follow those principles themselves. And it's been a while since I've known for a long time that many of the churches, and it varies, actually preach the reverse of Christ. Christ taught about how to let go of guilt, how to let go of sin, how to let go of fear. And what they're preaching is sin, fear, and guilt, and establishing the fear in people. And that's the complete opposite. You're
But
complete opposite with Christ.
that's their job. That's the devil working through the churches. It's so the what is it? They call him the angel of light. Is that what the devil is? The angel of light, or something like that, or black. Something like that. I'm misquoting it, but he's disguised as the angel, like as light, and so people believe it. For the longest time, with my past sins, I held on to it for so long, and I hated myself. And then other Christians were like, "What are you doing? Stop condemning yourself. He did not come to condemn the world. It's forgiven, dear. Let it go." Yeah. And I wasn't letting it go, and that was clearly the devil or some demon doing its work on me. And it's just, you're so right. I can't believe you said that. That's so accurate. Yeah.
There's also, I think the devil is in the form of the ego, which we fabricate. The universe created us, of the universe, not part of the universe, but of the universe. We're one with the universe. We are the universe. And in our early stages of life, you created Dia, and I created Malcolm, and they're fabrications. They are. And what they do is the ego fights like crazy to try and hang on to that entity, Malcolm. So Malcolm then tries to do things to get credit, to get achievement, to belong, and all the rest of it. Whereas the real Malcolm is wonderful. The real Dia is wonderful. The real anyone is wonderful. Even the real Adolf Hitler was wonderful, So,
I see your point.
But he wasn't himself. He wasn't himself.
No, and it's a corrupted world we live in, and it's only getting more corrupted. And sadly, with church, you said that the Catholic Church used to hold out on these things. I actually think the Catholic Church is working with the rulers, the globalists, whatever you want to call it. I would say quite the opposite, which surprises people. They're like, "But wait, aren't you Catholic?" I'm like, "No, I used to be, not now."
No, I'd agree with you. What I meant was that the Catholics, from what I've seen and learned, the Catholics are very much into guilt and fear, and they preach that. And they're elements of control. They're tools for control. But the Catholic Church used to hold out on things like abortion, on same-sex marriage, on things like climate change. They wanted the data. And then, what would you say, around about 5 years? I don't even know how long the current Pope's been in, Dia, but the current Pope went woke.
5 or 6 years, I think.
Yeah, Obama.
Bit longer, yeah.
So probably about 7 or 8 years, the Catholic Church has been driven by the globalists. And there are some sects within the Catholic Church that have always been with the globalists, But now the mainstream seem to be as well, which is a real shame.
Yeah, it is a real shame. And it's what bothers me about the Australian government is, and I'm not one of those Christians that thinks, that the Antichrist is just around the corner. I don't. But I do think that, well, that's just me, because I get into so many fights with other Christians.
I'm with you.
Yeah, okay, thank you. I appreciate that. But I do think that that in every century of the last, 1,000 years or whatever, 2,000 years, there is going to be those moments where Christians are persecuted. It just seems to keep happening. And we're not suffering like the Middle Eastern Christians who get killed for their thought crimes and for their faith in Christ. But we're certainly, like, churches are closed. We can't go to church. And it's not even about us. Like, what about the Jews who feel the same thing about fellowshipping with what about Hindus? What about, like, anyone who has that feeling of community in a building of worship, even though the church is the people, and I know that, everyone be quiet. It does concern me. It bothers me. Do you think the government has a right to make those sorts of decisions on behalf of people who consider that an essential? I mean, I go to Victoria. I can get a prostitute easy in Victoria. Go me. Yeah, but I can't.
They're not affected by the lockdowns. But the churches are shut down by the lockdowns, but prostitution's not.
Yeah, so that's A-okay.
Yeah. So no, the church should not be constrained, censored by the governments at all.
At all.
Not at all. No, there should be freedom of worship, freedom of speech, freedom of thought, freedom of belief. All of these things have been knocked out. Freedom of expression, freedom of interaction, freedom of exchange, freedom to belong, freedom of association, freedom of movement. All of these things have been stifled. And let's face it, the church, the proper church, espouses the teachings of Christ, and Buddha's teachings, I think, are wonderful as well. Now, those give us freedom no matter what happens. Viktor Frankl said that the Nazis could control him in the prisoner of war camp. They could control everything except his feelings and his attitude. He was the master of those. And so what you do is when you strip away the church brings two things. It brings some connection with the universal. Depends on the teaching, of course. But it also, the great religions have a common themes behind them, principles of behaving, charter of behavior, if you like, code of conduct. And the control apparatus in a government doesn't like that, because it makes you independent of the government, harder to control. They want to strip away religion. Communism's been doing that for 100 years now, 150 years since Marx, because it's deliberate, it's calculated. They don't want you to think freely and to be safe and secure in your real self. And that's where the real safety and security is, in our real self,
Yet explain this. We're in an age where we have Wi-Fi, internet, more access to information than ever before, but people are stupider. How does that one work? People they're doing exactly as you said. They are far more reliant on government. Daddy will protect you. Here you go.
Well, it's a funny thing. I've turned around quite a few businesses in my time as a manager and as a general manager of these businesses, hundreds of people. And when I've come there, the previous manager may have been dishonest, or may have been lazy, or may have been incompetent, or may have been a control freak. And under those circumstances, the people didn't want to make their own decisions. And so when I came along, and the best way to make decisions is to make them as closely as possible to the source where they're going to be implemented. So you get the workers to do it. And so I would come along and they'd all go, oh, hell no, we can't do that, because that means responsibility, but within a very short time, when they can see you're trustworthy and you're competent and you're giving them a fair go, providing we hand over the authority, then they take the responsibility. And that doesn't mean, abandonment, giving every piece of authority, but it means giving people the authority within their abilities, within their scope of work. And people love it. At first they're going, no, I can't handle it. But then they want more. And then especially some of them, that it's just such a wonderful thing. I'm very, very, you can probably tell, I'm very, very pro-human, extremely pro-human. And
are you pro-life?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. Just what I asked. Sorry. Yeah.
No, definitely. But being pro-human is really important, because these days the ideologists and the globalists are pushing that humans are irresponsible, greedy, uncaring, voracious, and so
are they talking about themselves? Yeah.
Control freaks, and yeah, they are talking about themselves. But that's the beauty of our species comes when we're set free, and then we can think for ourselves, we can have our own beliefs, and then I might come up with an idea. I might bounce that off you, and you go, oh, wow, that's a wonderful idea. And you see a different perspective in that than I did. And then someone else comes along and you've shared it with them, and they go, wow, we can really meet some people's needs in this. And so they make it into a product or a service. And that liberates so many people from drudgery or danger or insecurity. And so that may have started within me. It was blown up by you, and then it completely blown up and made into something real for billions of people. That's the history of our civilization. That's the history of human progress, when people are free.
Absolutely, which is why I can't help feel a little bit guilty about this. But lately, my head, as a Christian, I think it's wrong for me to think this. But lately, I feel like I really, really am attracted to anarcho-capitalism. But I know we need to be ruled. We do need to have a ruler. Like the Jews asked God, give us a ruler. And so they got David, I think was it David? Anyway, they got a ruler. So I think we need to be ruled as human specimens. We need to be ruled. But I like the idea of anarcho-capitalism. I feel like the government has been so stringent that it's like they're leading people away from them. The more you're strict with that child, the more. Oh, Saul, thank you, Jesse. Yep, Saul. Yeah, the more you're strict with that teenager, the more the teenager's going to want to rebel. That's what the government's doing to us.
You raised several really important points. Maria Montessori.
Smarter than I look.
Her.
No,
no, you look pretty smart. Okay. Maria Montessori. She She lived from about the 1880s to about
Oh, I have heard that name
19.
actually.
Yeah, she developed phenomenal powers of observation. Very, very objective, a real truth seeker, and she didn't care who she upset by telling the truth. I mean, she didn't go out to have a fight, but she
No.
wouldn't back away. And she observed how humans develop. And I won't go into all the details now. We'll be here all night. But she was wonderful, and she said, when this is not her exact words, paraphrasing, wherever you see a lack of responsibility, there is a lack of freedom. Because you
That is
can't
smart.
have,
I like that.
yeah, you can't have responsibility without freedom. Because if I don't give you the freedom, then I'm ruling you, or I'm
Yes.
telling you what to do. I'm guiding you. And so what she and Montessori schools, people learn by doing. You know that, dear. We don't learn by having someone pour something into our heads by teaching.
Yeah,
We learn
exactly.
by using, and we learn by discovery. So what you might be interested in something right now that doesn't interest me at all. In 10 days' time, it might be the reverse. So when we're ready to learn, we're hungry, and people love to learn, and kids love to learn.
Yeah.
And so Maria Montessori created an environment where kids make the choices about their learning. And the teacher is not a teacher at all. She or he is a guide. And they steer the child, and very, very, and it's beautiful when you sit in a proper Montessori classroom. The kids are so well behaved, and they're
Yeah?
quiet and
Good.
respectful because they understand why it's important. It's not being browbeaten under them. It's not being bashed into them. There's no fear. There's just a respect for themselves and for each other. And that is the most beautiful thing on the planet. When you see a 4-year-old boy or girl, that, as Tom Peters said, the famous management guru, said, that is the height of civilization, because
That's
he or
fantastic.
she is still creative, still free, tell you exactly what they think, and tell you exactly what they feel, ask you questions that embarrass adults, and they're just wonderful. And that's the real human. And we've destroyed
amazing.
that.
Well, it's funny because this is not a statistic what I'm about to say, but I've gathered these anecdotes from several different people. Everyone who I know who has homeschooled their children, I don't mean lately because of the lockdowns, but because they didn't want the kids vaccinated. They wanted their children to learn their own curriculum, I guess, or whatever it is. They said that whatever it is you learnt in the 8 hours that you were at school, their kids could do it within an hour and a half. That's what they said. And that sounds similar to the Montessori thing you were just saying about how beautiful it is to see a 4-year-old behave. The lady who lives down the road from me, she's a friend, she's a Christian. Her kids, she homeschooled them all. And it's not just like a mother homeschooling her kids. People seem to think that that's all it is. There's a community, and then you can hire out a hall, and then have like, there's a lovely community of mothers. And if you're a mother who can't teach math, God knows, if I ever homeschool my kids and I ever have kids, I won't be teaching those kids maths. I'll leave that to another mother down the road. But like, point is, it is the way they absorb the information. They just seem better educated and more articulate than someone from a classroom. Isn't that unusual? Don't you find that interesting?
No, it's not unusual. Not unusual at all.
It's not unusual? Yeah, well, it's new to me. It's new to me to hear that.
That's exactly what the experience is with so many people, that homeschooling usually brings kids who are more interactive socially with other kids their own age, and with people in general. So I was just checking there to make sure that post that I did click publish, and it did. So,
on Instagram or on Facebook?
Yeah, both. But the thing, and we know Twitter's done for you. But
thank you.
but yeah, getting back to that, I was distracted as I was talking.
Sorry. Yes.
No, I distracted myself. But kids are naturally inquisitive. You watch a baby lion cub. It'll follow its parents along, but it gets a little distracted, and every now and then the adult lion will give it a cuff across the head. And I'm not in favor of capital punishment. I think if you hit a child, you've lost it. But
the Bible
there are better
says
ways.
The rod. But anyway, that's a last resort, I think, the rod.
Yeah, you only do that for not rod, but you only use force for the protective use of force, where someone
like if they're about to cross the road and hit by a car,
correct.
You've got to smack them out of the way. Yeah.
And
Fair
that
enough.
might get them
Sorry,
upset. But the point is that the cub is watching, whether it's a foal with horses, a cub with a lion, or a puppy with a dog. They're watching the adults the whole time, and they're learning. They have a bit of fun, and they get distracted, but they're learning the whole time. That's exactly what kids do. And that's why parenting is so important, because we're the role model for them. And it's not easy at times in these days.
How many kids do you have?
Only two. One's 28 and the other's 25.
There you go. Are they really smart? Were they homeschooled?
No, they went to a Montessori school.
Oh, well, there you go. So pretty much what you were saying.
Oh yeah, we picked it out. We did our research, and that's one of the only fault with the Montessori school is that quite often the teachers are brought up in a traditional environment and they can't let go. They can't.
I understand what you're saying.
How you let people develop a sense of responsibility. So a lot of Montessori schools aren't true Montessori, but at least they're heading in the right direction. So you've got a bit more of a chance. But a true Montessori school is just divine. It's absolutely fabulous. You can just watch the kids blossom because they're responsible for what they learn and they know it. And you should see it, dear. Kids come together, might be that you're having a bit of problems as a kid learning maths or something like that.
Yeah,
the other kids will come together and show you how to do it. And see, when they're teaching, they're learning, because best way to learn is to teach. So, but it's done in a very, and they also teach each other in terms of discipline. Now, dear, you can't do that, and here's why you can't do it. And when you get it from a kid, one of your peers, then you really understand it, and you understand it through that context. So it's just beautiful. But humans are beautiful
when they're well behaved and kind.
Well. Yeah, unfortunately, as we've already discussed, the devil is in each of us, and heaven's in each of us too. But our ego sets us on little goose chases every now and then, and we want to protect our turf, protect our ego, get control, all the things that we don't like, we do, sometimes.
For sure. Well, you represent One Nation. Is that still accurate to say? You're part of One Nation? No,
I'm a member of One Nation.
Amend the statement. You're a member of One Nation.
And very, very, very proud to be. But I don't represent One Nation. I represent the people of Queensland and Australia. So I'm their voice. I'm a servant to them. No, that's the way. See, there've been so many things that are ingrained in us and kids. You're a Liberal. You're a Labor Party. You're a Green. You're a One Nation. No. That's the way many of the politicians work. But it shows the Parliament has been abandoned. It's lost its true role of serving the people. So we're servants to the people. That's what I am. I happen to be a servant to the people of Queensland and Australia, representing the people of Queensland in the federal parliament, and I'm a member of One Nation Party.
And how closely do you work with Pauline Hanson?
Oh, quite close. She's lovely. I mean, she is so wonderfully honest. She is so wonderfully strong. People, they sometimes have a go at her because she's got this reputation for being
a hard ass. Tough.
Yes.
Yeah, but I think that she needs to be.
Yes, she's not really. No. If something contradicts her or breaks her principles, she'll let you know. But she'll also say, Malcolm, we have our party meetings, and she'll say, we haven't been together on this before. So what are your views on this? And I'll tell her my views, and she'll say, oh, no, I don't agree with you at all. And then she'll tell her views. And quite often, because she's very, very savvy. She's most astute politician in Canberra, I would say. She's got a strong gut feel, strong intuition, female intuition combined with political instincts. But then sometimes I'm only a baby compared to her. But sometimes I'll say, but hang on, Pauline, what about these facts? And she'll go, oh, no, we'll go your way. Definitely. That's it. And if she doesn't like what I'm saying, she'll tell me. And then we'll have a discussion and then we sort things out like that. But she's not aggressive. She's not a hard ass. She can sometimes look at you and say, what do you mean? And these yellow eyes go, woof. And some people, if you don't know her, you tremble. But I meant
hard ass in a good way, FYI. I wasn't being a bitch to her. Yeah.
She doesn't like fighting. She actually doesn't like it. But there's one thing she likes even less, and that's not telling the truth, not being honest. No. She doesn't like confrontation, but she dislikes even more running away from something. So if it means confronting someone, she'll do it. But she'll feel nervous all the way through it. But at the end of it, she'll say, well, at least I spoke my mind. That's it.
Good. No, that's definitely good. Yeah, I believe you. I booked her actually some time ago to be on my show, and she said yes. And then at the very last second, she backed out because she didn't like my abortion questions. I think I scared her off a little bit. I didn't mean to, but
She's against the latest changes to the abortions in Queensland. Very much against it. She wanted to leave
she
them
may
as
well
they were.
be. She may well be. I would have loved to have had the same conversation with her about it, because I think and how right was she so many years ago about the state of the property market, and never was it. I never did. I think. I mean, at the time I did think it, but years later, when I became astute when it came to politics, I was like, she's not racist. Just because she's made an observation about the Chinese property market, that doesn't make her a racist. That's so stupid. And how accurate was she? Bang on.
Yes, she
literally predicted the future.
Yeah, she's so accurate in so many things. She's got very great women's intuition combined with political instincts, and she tells the truth. And so she doesn't run away from saying something that the woke will think is terrible. But you know, the use of labels has taken over politics. It's been around for 100 years, pretty much.
Yeah, you should know you're talking to a neo-Nazi right now. You're talking to a neo-Nazi, a traitor to women, a transphobe. I forget what else I am, but yeah.
Oh, I'm
just
some of them
know
too.
that. Yeah, you probably are.
That label. But what I say to people is, when you call me a neo-Nazi, a racist, a fascist, an Islamophobe, whatever you want to call me.
That's one of their favorites.
Yeah, I just turn around and say, well, dear, thank you very much, because you've just confirmed that you haven't got the logic and the data to beat my argument. So you've surrendered to label. So thank you very much for confirming that my argument wins. And you know,
that's legit what that means.
Yeah, it does hurt Pauline when people call her racist, but she is not the least bit racist. And
I know that. Yeah,
I can remember the just straight after I was elected into the Senate the first time in 2016, walking up to One Nation headquarters, which was in Albion at the time. And these three people from Northern Territory came out of the office towards me, and they recognized who I was, and they were black as can be. I mean, their skins were really dark, right? And they had these beautiful smiles, and they walked over to me and said, "Where's Pauline?" And I said, "She's going to be here in about half an hour," whatever it was, I can't remember. And they said, "We have come from the Territory to talk to her because she's the only one that gets it." And you talk to Aboriginals all over the place. They love Pauline. They really respect her and they admire her because they know that she is against the policies that are destroying them. And she knows that. And same with myself. So another funny story. I was born in India, but we have an Indian, we've had a few Indian candidates over the years, and one was in north side of Brisbane. And I was helping him do some road siding before the election day, you know. And he was wearing a bright orange One Nation T-shirt, and so was I. And he just happened to be on his own for a minute while I was getting a drink of water or something. And I looked up, and here's someone going around the intersection, yelling out to him, "Racist!" And I thought, his skin is dark, he's clearly Indian, and he's got a lovely character, but he's still being called racist because he's wearing an orange T-shirt. So
stupid. Well, Riccardo Bossi, he's Italian, and he gets labeled as a racist too. And I'm like, it's like he's been in this country longer than the people who are calling him that. But okay.
That's a term of when someone uses words. If I call you something, that reflects on me, not you.
Oh yes, I know that.
But
many people don't know that.
Correct, and that's and the fact
they figure it out later.
Yeah, so many people on the control side of politics. I don't use the term left and right. I try to avoid that.
I don't either anymore. I mean, less and less anyway, I should say.
Yeah.
Well,
it's really control versus
I'm coming
freedom.
to the realization you've come to. I'm getting there.
Yeah, it's not left versus right. It's control versus freedom, and that's the eternal struggle.
But yes,
well, I was going to say that's the eternal struggle, not only within our society but within each of us, and so control. Always beneath control there is fear. Always beneath control there's fear. And so what we see is a lot of the control side of politics, which most people identify with as the left, the woke, they're using these labels to control. That's all they're doing. And so when we expose that, and the best way to expose that is not to attack them, but simply to point out the error in their arguments and to have compassion and forgiveness for them, because Christ taught grace. And that's the thing that is so important, because then people see that you're strong in yourself. Because it doesn't matter what someone else says about you.
No, it really doesn't, and that's taken me about 1.5 years to learn. Well, I should
Well,
say
you're
it's
quick.
taken me 30 odd years. Well, no, yeah, technically, yeah. It took a while, but wow, I didn't mean to. Like, I haven't even spoken to you about the things I really wanted to speak about. Like, we've just been vibing. We're vibing. Can you feel it? No, I'm kidding.
Yes.
Yeah, but don't you find this to be true that just because this is you cut people out of your life, people who are bad for you, are toxic, it doesn't mean you hate them. It just means you're trying to give them grace by backing away. I only realized that kind of like really recently, that you can forgive someone and still love them and have nothing to do with them because you don't trust them, but you can still and people see, like, if I'd gone back to that situation, I would have actually been exposing myself to the same problems, but they would have seen me as weak. Whereas finally now I feel like I've taken the stronger stance, but still in love. Do you know that already? I'm sure as an adult you already
Yeah,
know.
it
Not that I'm
is
not an
really
adult.
important. It's really important because I agree with you entirely, because
It's
the
biblical.
number one person that needs love is ourself. So we have to
Yes.
love ourselves. And if I'm pretending to enjoy the company of others, or I'm putting up with it and I'm not really enjoying it, then I'm being disrespectful to myself. Now, there are
And
some
to them.
times when we have to listen to people as part of our role, who we might not agree with, but then we still have to treat them with respect. Because
Yes.
if I treat someone else with disrespect, I'm treating myself with disrespect. So, the things that are good
I
in
love that.
life, like love, a smile, forgiveness, grace, kindness,
Yeah.
happiness, when we give that, we actually give it to ourselves as well as the other person.
I
They're the
so
things,
agree.
and they're all free. They're the most important things in life, but they're all free. And when I
That's so
give
true.
you, attention or a smile or a compliment, providing it's sincere, then
Yeah.
I'm actually feeling much better myself. And that's the sense Christ also talked about it. No, the Bible talks about it in terms of gratitude, appreciation. I've done studies in this in America, and scientific studies have been proven this, and that if we appreciate something, then we actually change the vibration of our heart, literally. And the heart is the only thing. It's going to take a while to explain this, so I won't go into it. But the heart actually changes the mind's perceptions of things, literally.
There you go. I believe
Yeah,
that. That makes sense. I think that makes sense. Yeah,
that's why every
absolutely.
every civilization has this phrase that says, "What's your heart say, dear?"
But the heart is
Every
also deceptive.
not the real heart, not the heart
Okay,
heart.
okay. Fair enough. Okay. Just because I think I've been led astray by that thing.
Well, you're talking about romantic love, are you?
Oh, maybe.
Well, that's there
That's a
to enjoy
different
as
thing.
well.
Yeah. All right. Well, let me get into some of the points I actually probably wanted to ask you. Why should, like, we're very, very rightly so skeptical of so many politicians these days, right? Because how can we trust a politician when they're going to act like Dan Andrews? I'm originally from Melbourne. Like, I've been in New South Wales the last 2 years, but I want to go home. I miss my family. How am I supposed to get over the border if I'm considered unvaccinated? They're letting in people internationally and students, but they won't let me, who is a Melbourner, back into my own state. Like, how would you respond to that?
Well, we can't trust them.
No,
What they're after is
I don't
control.
trust you, Malcolm. No, just kidding.
What we're after is control. Oh, sorry, what these people are after is control.
That was a
What,
bad slip of
we
the tongue there.
no. But what these people are after is
Thereafter, yeah.
control. Yeah.
Yes.
So it's very important to recognize that, and always beneath control there is fear. So
Yeah.
Andrews is afraid of losing the next election, so he will do whatever
Yeah,
he
so act
can.
like an
That
ass?
he Yes, but what he thinks he's doing is, it happened up here in Queensland as
Queensland?
well. Yeah, Anastasia Palaszczuk
She
in
got it.
February of last year, she
Yeah.
was on the way out. There was no doubt about it. Even the incompetent and weak Liberal National Party opposition were going to belt her. There was no doubt about that. Even the
But she
Labor
got
Party knew that.
re-elected. Yeah.
Yes, but what happened was that along came the virus in March, and that started turning things around. And what she did then was telling She and the Labor Party machine. The Labor Party machine's very, very well organized, highly disciplined, very wealthy, gets a lot of money and gets a lot of control. Highly disciplined. Now, Labor Party MPs don't listen to the people and represent the people. They do what the machine tells them to because they want to stay in politics and they want to stay in parliament. So what they did was they preach fear, fear, fear. And short term, on something unknown, fear works. Long term, it debilitates. And now the Labor Party, we know from internal polling, we've heard from people within the party, that the Labor Party in Queensland is terrified about losing votes to One Nation and other smaller parties.
Right.
Because they're now starting to see that when you have a politician who's abandoned the economics, the economic management, abandoned mental health issues, and said to the chief health officer in the state, you run the state. The chief health officer says, I can only look after the medical aspects. So that's one thing. So she's abandoned. They're no longer ruling. They're no longer governing. But the other thing they're doing is they're making so many contradictions. You know, you can go to the football with 43,000 people, and I've been a league player and a union player, so I love it. But
lovely. I'd like to see that.
You can go there to the grand final last Sunday.
Yes.
But you can't go. You can't have more than 20 people at a wedding dance. I mean, this is so wrong. You can get a prostitute in Melbourne, but you can't go to church. So
liquor's an essential too. Liquor.
Yeah. Well, who was it? I think it was in Victoria. They said the reality is that if we ban liquor, if we come down hard on liquor stores like we're doing on other small businesses, the vote will backfire and people will really get upset. So we can't afford to do that, which tells you
it's all strategic then.
Correct.
I mean, I half knew because of the agenda, but oh my Lord.
Yeah, there's nothing to do in this with health. You know, if you value health, you don't have lockdowns. Even the corrupt, incompetent, dishonest World Health Organization has admitted that.
They have admitted a lot of things about the masks.
Yeah, exactly. And about masks, the injections they're putting on people, they're not tested, they're not approved. They're tested in small amount under the manufacturers say so, but not under objective testing, not independent testing. They're not completed anywhere near. There are so many things about the injections that have not been tested and they don't know about, and yet they're now pushing them on people. You know, I'm very much in favor of medicines that have been tested thoroughly and proven safe and effective and preferably affordable and preferably readily available. I'm totally opposed to these particular injections, the COVID injections. I've had other vaccines, but I'm not taking this one because there's so much that's not right about them. So I hope you don't get banned because I've just said that. But
YouTube. We're not meaning to give it. That's all right. No misinformation is intended. Yes, this is his view, and do your own research, audience. Keep going.
Correct.
I said that at the start anyway.
Yes. What was I going to? Yeah. So what we've got now is a situation where people have a choice between having an injection or starving. They can't go and
I saw your video. I saw you say that. That was amazing. Well done.
Well, think about these things. You know, what's more important to a parent? Nothing more important than their child. And so some people can withhold not getting the injection for 12 months, be out of work or stood down for 12 months. Others can last just a week, right? So then they've got to choose between putting food in their kids' bellies or getting or starving. And if they want to put food in, they're going to have to stay with their job. So that means getting the injection. And that's so there's been something wonderful come out of that deal, because some of the protesters in Melbourne just a couple of weeks ago, last week, were actually double vaccinated. They weren't arguing against being vaccinated. They were arguing against forcing vaccination. They were there marching and protesting for freedom. That's a wonderful thing when people.
It is.
The government has tried to put us versus them, the injected versus the non-injected. And people have said, to hell with that. We're not interested. Small businesses have said, we won't open up until everyone can get the benefit of our services, our products. And that's wonderful. They're letting go of income at the moment, but they're saying we want a united society, a one nation, a one community, rather than a divided, fragmented. And the bullies always fragment to set one against the other. That's what they always do. And that's all they're doing here.
And it's so vile that I think of like Rosa Parks. I think of Loving versus Virginia. I think of these cases where blacks and even my people, Latinos in America, were not allowed in stores. It was like I saw the signs: no pigs, no Mexicans, no blacks. Like that's what existed at that time, and that was government sanctioned. And it's just they're doing it again. Only they're doing it against any color, and it's literally about a liquid in your body. It's so retarded. Like, oh, it's so stupid.
Every monopoly, and I'll come back to something you raised a minute ago, I didn't hear it clearly, but every monopoly which involves control has been created by governments. Monopolies are not natural in a free market. Every monopoly you see is about getting control through Parliament for a vested interest, for a favoured business. That's where it is. You said a minute ago, a while ago, about you're in favour of capitalism. What was the word you used? What sort of market capitalism?
Anarcho-capitalism. Anarcho-capitalism. So it's like anarchism, anarchy, but under capitalism.
Okay.
So it's like not like but dickheads just being crazy. There's leftist anarchy and then there's a right-wing anarchy, and mine is the anarchy/capitalism. Does that make sense? Do you understand what I kind of mean? Yeah.
Capitalism is naturally not anarchic, but I can see what you're getting at there. It's always about a better idea trumping a worse idea.
Yeah. Yes.
So what might be a wonderful idea now, with the benefit of our development as a society, a civilization, with the development of science and technology, might be a lousy idea in 5 years' time. So we've got to be prepared to ditch that. And governments never ditch that. They hold on to something to control and to enable vested interest to control. So a true free market capitalism, the better idea wins. We don't have capitalism at the moment. And you'll see people like Kevin Rudd, the Labor Party in particular, even some liberals, and you'll see the Greens especially. They don't like capitalism because capitalism removes control. What they want is legislation to control people under the guise of protecting capitalism. But it's rubbish. They're not protecting capitalism, they're destroying it.
Australia has never been a capitalist country, though. Aren't we a constitutional monarchy?
Yes, but a constitutional monarchy can still be capitalist.
True, but we've been communistic or socialist without realizing it for a number of years.
That's right. And whenever something negative happens, capitalism is blamed, but you can actually trace it to over-government, over-regulation. And the global financial crisis was caused by government, excessive government in the United States.
Yes.
And on behalf of some major banks that were being protected by the government. So it was about control. And the banks, of course, when you're protected, as in a monopoly, you've got no sense of responsibility or accountability. You can just make any decision you want to get more, and that will eventually destroy, because the universe is free, the universe is in balance, and that balance changes over time, but the universe is in balance, and a controlling monopoly is not in balance. It's completely overbalanced or out of balance. So these are the things that we can see. And yet when that collapsed, Kevin Rudd, the Prime Minister at the time, said, "Oh, we've got to be here to save capitalism." What? You caused the problem. I mean, the American government caused the problem.
You just reminded me of something. Daniel Andrews posted something either on Twitter or Facebook where he said, "We're going to have at schools a mental health, assigned mental health individual because our kids are so important." Like, you dickhead, you caused the whole thing. That's literally the same thing.
See, and you've got to be so careful, because that's what happens with these politicians. They will tell a blatant lie, completely contradicting what is before your face. But many people will say, "Oh, yeah, okay." And that's what happens when we're in fear. And that's why another reason why politicians use fear. When we're afraid, our thinking skills, our neocortex, our logical rational thinking skills just get wiped, just get bypassed. And so it's a wonderful place to put people in fear if you want to control them. Hitler did it. Stalin did it. Every
Mao probably did it.
Mao definitely did it. No, communists, that's their way of living.
Absolutely true. This is a friend of mine. He does podcasts and stuff as well. He wants to know, and actually this was one of my questions, which is why I've placed it up. Senator Roberts, what are your honest thoughts about Premier Perrottet taking over Gladys? Do you believe we are now going to be free from this controlling agenda? Good question, Don.
Very good question. I don't know enough. I'll always tell you
Neither
the
do
truth.
I,
I haven't
yeah.
done the research, then I can't tell you. There are a couple of encouraging signs and some worrying signs about Mr. Perrottet.
Please state them.
The positive signs that give us hope is that he's against lockdowns.
He sounds like a Christian too.
Yes, I'm sure he is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so is ScoMo.
No, his behaviours.
You shall know them by their fruits.
Yeah, I can't see the Christian behaviours in the Prime Minister.
Likewise.
And it's significant, by the way, that Mr. Perrottet is being attacked for his Catholicism.
Yes,
that tells you a couple of things. They're worried about him, and they're trying to divert everything onto that, which is a nonsense.
It's a non-issue.
Yeah, that's right. So, so long as that doesn't affect how he governs, that's fine. And if anything, you know, churches give us church teachings, Christian teachings give us two things: a sense. We talked about this a little while ago. A sense of the universe, but the other thing it gives us is a set of a code of conduct, of values. And I'd say Perrottet has good values. So they're the positive things. He's also pulled a very, very clever move in making Keane his treasurer, because Keane is bloody hopeless. Keane has got some terrible policies. He's got no idea what he's doing when it comes to pushing these unreliables. That's my term for renewables, wind and solar. They're destroying New South Wales. They're destroying Australia. And the thing will catch up with him. And as a treasurer, when he's in the Treasury, hopefully the Treasury will show him it's going to cost jobs, and it's already costing jobs. So as Treasurer, you're responsible for inflation and also unemployment, taxation, revenue, etc. So you've got to be more responsible. If he makes a mess of this, and if he keeps going on the same path he has been with unreliables, he will make a mess of the state, and that will bring him undone. So it's pretty savvy, perhaps, of Perrottet to give him the treasurer job. What else do I like about Perrottet? As I said, I don't know a lot about him. Oh, he's made a mess of eye care in New South Wales. I wrote to him about that.
I didn't even know that.
My role as senator. There were some really stupid things going on there. People in the Hunter Valley that we were fighting for, casual coal miners, they didn't get what they were entitled to. We had to fight hard. I wrote him a letter. It was useless. He's also been in politics since he was 28, which I think is young.
That is young.
He hasn't done a lot outside of politics, and he's been in the game of politics. And sadly, when people are in the game of politics, they treat it as a game. Sometimes, most of them do. And so they see things as doing things now to look good in the future rather than doing
Game
of
Thrones.
Hey, that's it. So I've got my concerns about him, but he's made his first speech in Parliament. He talked about freedom. Oh, he had a very strong post in favor of Trump back in 2016. He talked about freedom of speech. He talked about the fact that climate skeptic is not necessarily a bad thing. It's a good thing, because you have to be skeptical about everything as a scientist. And he talked about, talking about freedoms is a good thing as well. And there were 4 or 5 things that were just wonderful in what he said. So if he believes them, we've got a good one. But he's been part of the Liberal school now, so he may be off the rails. I don't know.
I'm not a fan of the Liberals. I'm not a fan of Labor, and I'm not a fan of the Greens.
The Greens are the
they're just morons.
Force in Australian politics.
They are. Like Labor and the Greens, I never ever liked. The Liberals, I always thought, they're me, and I'm one of them. And then when I did research into them, I'm like, oh, they introduced abortion into the country. They were the first. Oh, they introduced same-sex marriage into the country. They were the first. And then, I have personal issues with them as well because they were mean to me, but that's okay. I just don't like the Liberals.
The biggest issue we're facing in our country is shoddy government, and the loss of parliamentary accountability. And the Liberals are a big part of the reason why that's happened. The Liberals have followed the Greens in introducing so many policies from the United Nations, and that means we're destroying our sovereignty. We're ceding our sovereignty to the UN, which is disgraceful.
It's
abortion
vile.
Policies, the agenda, the transgender policies, the climate policies, destroying our competitive advantage in energy and raising our cost of living dramatically. The family law problems. all came from the UN. I could rattle off probably 30 if you gave me enough time. The UN is a disgraceful organization, and the Liberals are implementing those policies against the national interest in this country.
Yeah. Would you say that this is what I've been telling people for the last 5 years? The people to vote for are the ones who are not career politicians. People like Trump, he wasn't a career politician. People like Ricardo Bossi, he's not a career politician. The Liberal Democrats, a lot of them are not career politicians. How long have you been in this profession?
I got in when I was in 2016, which made me 61. So I'm now 60.
So it's not that long. So you're not a career politician.
I got in after 60. So I'm definitely not a career politician. I
Can trust you a little more.
I never wanted to be and never aspired to be a politician. The only reason I became one was that Pauline heard me speak and said she wanted someone to speak strongly beside her in the Senate on the cause that I was championing. Yeah, so she realized that what I was fighting was corruption, dramatic corruption, which is costing people and families huge amounts of money, destroying livelihoods, destroying businesses around our country. And so she said, would I jump in? And I said, well, I'm not getting anywhere bashing the politician from outside. Let's go inside. So
well done.
So I tried that. Yeah.
That's good. My friend wants to ask for another question. Sorry.
To answer your question, I would encourage people along the lines of what you said. Don't vote for party. No. Vote for the candidate. Vote for the candidate with strength of character, meaning the candidate who says, who genuinely listens. That's what Pauline and I believe so strongly in. We have to listen. Politicians who can say, I'm sorry, Maria, dear, I made a mistake. I'm sorry, I don't know. Can you tell me? You'll notice that if you ask me a question, I don't know, I'll tell you, I don't know, because it's better than bullshitting to you.
Yeah, I hate that. Yeah.
So things like, yeah, can you give me a hand? I don't know. That's strength of character, the admissions of mistakes, so strength of character, telling the truth, owning up to things. The second thing I think we should be voting for is the values the candidate shows. Personal behavior, personal values. And the third thing is policies. If you look at the Liberal, Labor and Greens policies, they're almost identical. Now, people will laugh at me and say, how are the Greens policies like the Liberals? Go and look. Go and look at the actual implementation of them. The Greens put an extreme argument in. Destroy coal, stop coal mining, stop using coal, all the rest of it. The Liberals will say, no, champion coal. But every one of their policies since 2016, when the Treasurer held up a lump of coal in politics, in the Parliament, has been anti-coal. The words don't convey that, but they're undermining the coal industry. They're undermining the use of coal. They're undermining cheap electricity, which is fundamental to human progress. But everyone sees him as the man who held up a lump of coal. Completely false, because he says one thing and does the complete opposite.
You just reminded me of something that I hope won't make you too uncomfortable. Stuart Bonds is someone who I've interviewed. Stuart Bonds is very pro-coal, but he seems to have been ousted from One Nation. Do you have a comment on that?
Well, I like Stuart. He's a lovely guy.
I think he's a great guy.
He's a lovely guy. He's very down to earth. In politics, it's important to hold your convictions and to stick with your convictions and to put them out there. And we did that on an issue that involved Hunter Valley coal miners. We were the only ones, Stuart and I were the only ones, and he wasn't an elected rep, but he was doing it, helping me on the side. He brought the topic to me. And you can ask him. I did a hell of a lot for it, and we haven't let go. We fought the Labor Party on it. We fought the Liberals on it. We fought the National Party on it. we fought the Greens. No, we didn't fight them on that because they were pretty much letting it go. But there was no one championing the Hunter Valley coal miners. The union was undermining the coal miners themselves. And so we held that out, and we exposed all of that. And we're still fighting on those issues. Now, we then came up against an issue in Parliament where we had to vote in the national interest. And because the Labor Party and the unions, the CFMEU and the Hunter, and you notice I said not the CFMEU, I said the CFMEU and the Hunter.
I did notice
undermining those workers completely and dishonestly. And so and they were losing ground to us. So what the CFMEU did in the Hunter and the Labor Party did was come out and tell enormous lies about us. And so Stuart was concerned, as anyone would be, about the impact on his campaign. But we made a decision, and quite frankly, it was there wasn't enough time to keep Stuart adequately informed. But we made a decision for the benefit of the miners, for the benefit of small business, for the benefit of Australia, and the CFMEU and the Labor Party tried to tell lies about it. Now, Stuart panicked, I think, but he needed to stand firm, because politics, with Pauline especially, you stand firm with what you believe. And we've been vindicated. We've been proven right on that. And Stuart didn't apply to be a candidate. We then, once he disagreed with us in public, we opened it up for a pre-selection, and he didn't apply. So,
fair enough. I appreciate you responding. I didn't mean to make it uncomfortable by. Okay, yeah, because
I still like Stuart.
Yeah, no, he's a great guy. I've had him on my show a couple of times, actually. Yeah,
I've got a lot of time for him. Very bright guy.
Yeah, I just think he felt like he found out with the public that he was no longer, and I was like, oh, like I just felt bad for him. That's all. A friend of mine has written, Senator Malcolm, what made you get into politics? I think you kind of partially answered that before. What was it? Largely the fight. Was it largely to fight the Great Reset agenda and restore democracy? Did you want to touch on that?
Yeah, sure. Who's that? Is that Don again?
That's Dom again, yeah.
Yeah, Dom, is it? Yeah.
No, yeah. Or you call him Drake. It's confusing. I don't know what to call him. But yeah, Dom or Drake.
Dom or Drake. I became aware, I'm going to cut this story short, I became aware of what a con this global warming hoax was, what this climate alarmism was. Complete crap, absolute lies. But there's an agenda there to control. It comes out of the and don't take my word for it. Go and check the UN senior bureaucrats. They'll tell you that. They've said it themselves. Maurice Strong was the granddaddy who invented or fabricated global warming and climate change. And he did it. He had two objectives that he stated publicly. One was to deindustrialize Western civilization. What? We're going back to the caves, according to Maurice Strong. And the second one was to put in place an unelected socialist global government. Now, that's entirely possible. And you can see how things are governed without being elected at times. You just have to watch the way Parliament works and doesn't work. And the way corporations are governed by sometimes single people, and yet you have a board of directors of maybe 10 people. So it's very easy to govern without being elected. And that was their objective. So when I started investigating this climate scam, I did so because I understood carbon dioxide is a wonderful gas. It's a trace element in the atmosphere. It doesn't do any damage at all. Without it, life stops. So I started seeing them demonize that. And then I started looking at the science, and it was complete crap. There is nothing there. And I'm happy to go into that in detail. And then I started looking at who was pushing it, and that was the UN. And then I started looking at who was pushing the UN and some of the corruption and some of the massive self-interest from the people who would benefit from it. I'm talking not billions of dollars, I'm talking trillions of dollars, and control of people. And then I worked out that, and this is again from the UN in 1992, the Rio de Janeiro Declaration for 21st Century Global Governance. You've heard of Agenda 21. That all came out of that. And some massive world leaders were involved in that. I mean, George Bush Sr. was proclaiming it against, and that's treasonous, against his own country of which he was president. Mitterrand, I think, certainly the president of France, I think it was Mitterrand, and others around the world. It was in the Labour Party platform in this country. It's and so I then started realizing that. And then Pauline came and heard me speak, and she said, "Okay, I'd like you to stand with me." And then I did some research on Pauline. She was aware of these things, and she's the only politician in the federal sphere who's been calling it out since 1996. A quarter of a century ago, she started calling out Agenda 21.
Good on her, my gosh. Yeah, she really has predicted things quite well.
And when I learned about it about 10 years ago, I started calling it out. So we've got to call these things out. So in essence, it was to get in and have a go at this climate scam, undo it. But it was also to undo Agenda 21 and the UN. And in my first speech in the Parliament, I called for Australia to exit the United Nations, and I've called for it frequently since, and I will continue to call for it until we get out of that damn organization. It is crooked, corrupt, and dishonest.
Fantastic. I love hearing that.
The Great Reset is the same damn thing.
Yes, yes, it is, and whatever association we have with the World Health Organization and the World Economic Forum and all that garbage. Also, we need to leave whatever inter exchanges they've
Yep.
had. It needs to stop. This is my friend. He also happens to be the moderator to my chat. He's asking, Sir, do you honestly believe that in the broken system we have and how far it's gone, that there is a peaceful political solution? I ask this as a soldier.
I honestly believe there is, and I hope I'm right.
Yeah,
Doesn't
me
mean
too.
I am right. But you know, as a soldier, as a Jesse, as a
Jesse,
soldier,
yeah.
Jess, you signed up to work for the government. So at some time or other, the government abandoned you.
Yes, they
And
did. Oh my God. The
so,
fact that you said abandoned is so accurate because
yeah,
do you know how many of his friends in particular? He's had 13 friends commit suicide from PTSD.
all Australian Defence Forces.
Yes, sir.
Yep, it's disgraceful. So
Isn't it?
what we've done in this country is we've madly followed the United Nations, which the United States into conflicts that we had no right to be in. John Howard, the Liberal Prime Minister, who I have very little regard for now.
Fair enough.
I thought he was okay. I thought he was
Same.
okay. And then I found out later in doing my research, he was an absolute bastard. He betrayed this country. And that won't go down well with any viewers who are watching from the Liberal Party, but that's the reality. And when he got booted out of politics in 2007, I sent him a letter saying thank you.
Okay.
7 years later, in 2014, I realized what he's done, and I sent him another letter saying I rescind my first letter. You know,
Did he ever respond to them? I highly
no,
doubt he
he
would.
responded to the first one, not the second one. But you know, when he came back, he was in the United States when the World Trade Towers were demolished, right?
Oh,
He
okay.
came back, and this is not my word, this is Alexander Downer, who was foreign minister at the time. When he retired a few years later, he said this. He said when John Howard came back to Australia after the, what do they call that, the 9/11, he walked into the cabinet and said, well, we're off to Iraq. What? You got to go through the Executive Council. You've got to go through the cabinet, all these safety measures. He just said, we're off to Iraq. And the Liberal Party blindly followed the United States into that conflict. Right.
Oh, wow. Okay. Good to know.
And so that's the same with Vietnam, the same with Korea, the same with all of the conflicts this century. You know, Senator Ron Paul, who is a wonderful campaigner for freedom, he's advocating that instead of having a Defense Department alone, in America, they should have a Defense Department and a Peace Department. But he's not just some gypsy down at the bottom of the garden, you know, off with the fairies.
Yeah.
Ron Paul is very, very strong in economics. He believes very much in the free market and freedom. He's a very, very committed man to fighting for freedom. And what he said was that, and he studied the Federal Reserve Bank, which is privately owned and one of the vehicles for globalism. He said that in his book called End the Fed, he said every major recession since 1913, when the Fed was created, has been as a result of the Fed's policies. Every major war has been as directly attributable to the Fed's policies in the United States. So what we've got to do is be very respectful of our soldiers, male and female, and only send them to conflicts when they require our defense. That's it. Nothing else.
I quite agree. And I will read your question, Bill Hilly. I just wanted to offer another perspective as to what you're saying before I read his question. I wanted to ask you, whilst I agree with what you're saying, I can't help but think that I would want people to intervene. You're saying that we don't belong in those other countries for those issues. Sure, fine. I actually do agree with that. But on the odd occasion that Australia goes down even further and plummets even worse, I would possibly want American troops, Russian troops, whatever the hell it is who decides that they want to help us. I would possibly want someone to intervene and help us the way other countries have had help by bigger countries. Is that not worth thinking about as an option?
What's the greatest form of security and safety? If you look at these lockdowns and so on, They're removing safety and security. They're destroying safety and security. We know that. We can talk about that later if you like.
Completely accurate. Yeah.
The best form of safety and security for a family, for an individual, is a livelihood, a job, a breadwinner job. The second thing is a strong family around them. A third thing is a roof over their heads. And a fourth thing is being part of a community, whether it's a work community or a social community or a local community, being part of that community, because that's where you get the strength. Human beings have evolved to interact and to belong to belong in groups. That's the way we are. If you look at our defense of our country, the most important thing in any entity is the what do you call it now? The culture, the philosophy that drives people, the stated and unstated values, the stated and unstated feelings about the country, affection for the country, and the needs associated with the country, the myths, the legends, the behaviors. These are the things that are culture. You can tell an Australian is different from an American. And by the way, I love America. I went to America when I was 25, and I just love the joint. I've visited all 50 states. I've married married an American. Both my kids are dual citizens. My wife's a dual citizen.
Good to know. Nice.
Yeah, but America sadly has collapsed a lot in the last
hasn't it?
Last 30 years since I first went there. But anyway,
so
I love America. Sorry?
Started with George Bush Sr., I said.
It started with FDR, believe it or not, but
okay.
It actually started with Woodrow Wilson, who created the Federal Reserve Bank in 1913. But anyway, it accelerated under George Bush Jr. Bill Clinton was a disaster. Obama was shocking. Trump put it back on the rails, but he's been derailed himself. So anyway, the United States, where were we talking about? Where were we, Dia?
You said, that you love America, that there's dual citizenship and all that, but however, you said, hang on, audience, help me, that they have plummeted as well, and that
the United States has been driven quite often by the globalists, and their presidents have been selected at times, not elected. And so that's what FDR said. Presidents, American, and he was one of the globalists. He said himself, American presidents are selected, not elected. And you can say the same about some countries, but the basic thing is that America is off the rails. We shouldn't be following that alone. What we have to do for defense, you look at China. China has been bad-mouthing us. Okay, China has been bad-mouthing us and trying to bully us. When you see kids in a playground, when you see people at work, when you see a boss who's bullying one of his or her workers, who do they pick on? The strong kids or the weak kids?
The weak.
Of course they do. China has been trying to bully us because they're watching. Chinese are highly intelligent.
Yes, absolutely true.
They have a history of not being aggressive militarily, but of being aggressive economically. That's the way they are. Now, with this guy in charge now, he's a control freak, so who knows what he'll do. But the point is that the Chinese can see that since 1944, and especially since about 1972, and especially since 1996 under John Howard, we have ceded so much sovereignty to the United Nations, so much sovereignty to the other players outside our country.
Infuriating.
And so what that tells you is when a country's leadership, whether it be Labour, Liberal, Greens, National Party, and they've all been in power in coalitions over the last 20 years, they've all been in power. When they cede our sovereignty, when they go against our basic values, when they go against our cultural norms and our standards, our principles, when they enact policies that give us a poorer standard of living, when they sacrifice our country to some overseas political whims from the United Nations, that tells everyone that we are not standing up for ourselves. We are weakening our own family here in Australia. And if the politicians don't stand up for the people of Australia, then the Chinese are going to say, well, they're a weak bunch of bastards. Let's dominate them. And they're inviting. And then if you look at it, a strong military can only exist with a strong economy. You've got to fund that defense department. You've got to fund defense acquisitions and training. When you've got an economy that's being gutted, we went from being the lowest cost electricity in the world to now amongst the highest cost electricity in the world. We export our coal. Get this, the Chinese. We export our coal to China. They generate electricity for 8 cents a kilowatt hour, and we generate it and sell it for 25 cents a kilowatt hour. Our same coal. So what we're doing then is, and the biggest cost of manufacturing these days is not labor, dear, it's electricity. So that means we're shutting down our manufacturing and we're exporting it to China. And then we say to the Chinese,
and our cars, we used to have a car industry. We used to have cars made here. It's gone. What the hell are we doing? Our great-grandchildren are going to be in shit.
Exactly. And the Chinese are the source, along with Fauci from America, of the Wuhan virus. Okay, that's now proven beyond doubt. Yet anybody who said that 18 months ago was called a conspiracy theorist to shut them down. So the Chinese looking at that, and they're looking at the way we've torn apart our economy for these stupid lockdowns. Now we're injecting something into people that, in my opinion, is, and the adverse effects in America and Europe are startling. Tens of thousands, of 46,000 deaths as of July. Israel. So the Chinese looking at us and say, these guys are idiots. They're governed by wombats. And look at them. We have got fabulous people in Australia. Our education system is turning to crap, and putting out weaker people, but in terms of the basics. But we've got great people. We've got a strong work ethic. We've also got resources. We are now the world's largest exporter of energy. We have metals for making all the things around us. We have energy products. We have wonderful soil. We have wonderful water, but it's not managed. It's left to run into the oceans. We have a wonderful climate. You can grow almost anything anywhere in Australia anytime, except for down south in the middle of winter. We have huge markets in Asia right next to right on our doorstep, with the potential and the opportunity is just so wonderful. And we're getting screwed by wombats running the joint, completely destroying our country. And then the Chinese look at this and say, what the hell?
Absolutely true. And that's just schoolyard psychology. That's why I was bullied so much, because I was the wicked.
You don't sound too weak now.
No. I've grown out of all that crap. Mr. Bill Hilly, I apologize for delaying your question. Why doesn't the Senate act more as the states' rights house it is? Sorry, I'm reading that really badly. Why doesn't the Senate act more as the states' rights house it is and call out the government for putting bills through, that are not under their Section 51 responsibility? Sorry, I read that so horribly.
That is such a wonderful question. It
really
is delightful to know that someone gets it. Someone understands the purpose of the Senate.
I have a smart audience.
Yes, you do. If Mr. Bill Billy is anything to go by, he is exactly correct. And what I do is I do call that out. There's a little thing called competitive federalism. It's actually an enormous thing. If we go back to the roots of our Constitution, it was in the United States Constitution itself. If you go back to the roots of that Constitution, in 1776, the founders of the United States, and as I said, I've been in every state of the United States. I've studied their history. What an amazing group of people. Never have there been so many wonderful people, so many intelligent, dedicated people, and fighters for freedom in one gathering together. Now, when they had their revolution, they looked at Europe and they said, we don't want that mess. And that mess was run by central governments and privately owned central banks controlling central governments, getting into war because war requires a hell of a lot of money. And so countries will go into debt for just like that. So what they did, they said, we don't want that. So what they did was they said, we've got to have some form of central government, but we will severely limit what the central government does. Things like printing the currency, things like defense, foreign affairs, basics, things like that, trade, and then the rest of the things will be done by the 13 colonies of the United States. And those colonies, some were called Commonwealth, some were called states, some were called, I can't remember the other word. But
territories?
No, well, maybe earlier, but I don't think they were called that then. But anyway, dear, what they were sovereign, independent entities. They had control of money raising, taxation. They had control of most of the services that were provided. And that was a wonderful model because the United States was going to be very, very big. And so you couldn't have decisions in Washington to look after something on the far northwest coast, for example, where the climate is different and so on. So they had came up with a fabulous model. So what our forefathers did when they were developing our Constitution, they went around the world and looked, and they saw the American Constitution. And they saw the American Constitution was already starting to be corrupted because the central government was taking more power. The other beauty of a sovereign independent states is that if you have a strong central government that controls everything, it is easy for one or two people, and I mean this literally, history has shown this happens time and time again, one or two people to hijack that government. It's happening in this country. It's happened in America. But if you've got sovereign independent states, then you've got to hijack all the states to get the whole country. And so that's another provision. Now, what you'll see now is so many things. And so our country was set up that way. And our Section 51 was an attempt to make sure the states hung on to most of the power. So if you think about Sir Joh Bjelke-Petersen, not many people in the audience these days will probably be aware who he is. But what he did as the Premier of Queensland in the 1970s was that he said he abolished death duties, which are a terrible tax. Basically, you get taxed on what you leave your kids as their inheritance.
Oh, yeah,
terrible
that is a terrible tax. Yeah, it's very unethical.
Yeah, so what Joe did, Sir Joe, was he abolished death duties in Queensland. So that led to an amazing thing. Retirees would leave their states and come to Queensland to die. So that's in essence what they did, so that their kids would get more money when they left it to them. And so the Gold Coast took off, and the Gold Coast is a haven for retirement people. Now, then what that forced,
it's like our Florida.
It is. So what that forced other states to do, losing their retirees, what that forced them to do was to abolish death duty too. So what Joe was doing was taking advantage of fundamental in our Constitution, which is competitive federalism. Mm-hmm. And by that, if a state comes up with a better way of doing something, people will move to that state. If it screws up in an area, people will leave that state. Businesses will leave. And if you look at South Australia, it has destroyed its energy sector. And so businesses and people left South Australia. If you look at Victoria, I think something like 40,000 people have left Victoria and come to Queensland.
In the last 2 years, you mean?
In the last 12, 18 months because of Dan Andrews.
I'm so not surprised. I left as well. I'm in that category, except that I came to New South Wales. But
you're a refugee.
Yeah.
So what that does is it'll destroy Victoria more so. So Victorians will wake up and say, we can't put up with this idiot. We've got to get rid of him.
Will they? Are you sure? Because they already revoted the dude. They revoted him already.
I know, under the circumstances.
I was so angry.
Mm-hmm. But then you look at what happened with their opposition. Their opposition is pathetic. In the Liberal National Party in Victoria is atrocious, just like it was in South Australia. They had a terrible government in the, not Rand government, but in South Australia, Labor government. It should have been tossed out, but the Liberals were so poor, the Labor Party stayed there for 3 elections more than they should have. So what will happen eventually is Victorians will get so pissed off with what's going on, they will toss out the Liberal Party leadership and put decent people in there who will stand up, and they will clean up Dan Andrews.
Please, God. Please.
I want to go home for
Christmas. I want to go home for Christmas.
So what you've got is a marketplace for governance. The best ideas will win. But sometimes with humans, nothing. We don't wake up till our backs are against the wall. And so there'll have to be a lot of more suffering.
Yeah. Reg Penny asks, hey, Malcolm, I hope you're doing well. Should there be an inquiry onto the Greens and the communist movement? So far, the Greens are trying to gain more power to destroy Australia through this pandemic.
I don't think an inquiry will do the job. Reg, is it? Reg Penny? Yeah, I
Reg
don't think.
Penny. Reg, yeah.
I don't think inquiry will do the job. But what we need, the mess in Australia right now, I'm going to put the blame on all of us as voters. That includes you, dear, includes Reg Penny, includes Dom, because what's happened, the core mess in this country at state and federal levels is atrocious government, unaccountable government. Now the section, we didn't answer that question about State's House. So we'll come back to that. So what happens is the Parliament is there to oversee the government and hold the government accountable. What we've seen under Liberal National Party forming one side and Labor Greens forming the other side is a very cozy relationship. Their policies are similar. They look after each other because they don't want to upset the boat, because they'll be in next time maybe. So what we see is Parliament not really holding governments accountable. And then what we see is parliaments are working for the parties. They're working for vested interests. They're working for party donors to get them what they want. They're working. That's the promise. They've donated money to these tied up parties. Big Pharma has donated $500,000 to the Liberal Party for the last election. $400,000 to the Labor Party.
Big Pharma. Yeah.
No, but there you go. They're feeding both sides of it. So they're maintaining their connections. They'll call in their favors, and they're doing that right now. So what we've got is we've got parties working for the parties, not for the country. Parties working for the parties and their donors, not for the country. We need to change that back to voting for people who will listen to and serve the people. I'm a representative of the people of Queensland. I speak for the people of Queensland. That's my job. You know, when I did my first speech, and every speech, apart from 1-minute speeches and 2-minute speeches, I start with the words, "As a servant to the people of Queensland, Australia." In my first speech, when I used those words, it's just the truth. And it was putting it out there. So in my first speech, when I did that, dear, there were Labor Party people who were laughing at me, laughing. You know, so and
tell me the names. Tell me the names. I'll grab them.
So what I'm saying is that the voters have put the current people in there. The party hacks, 1 or 2 people in each party, control what's going on. Some of those people are not in Parliament. So they control. They say basically, dear, if you're a Liberal member now or a Labor member now, especially the Labor Party, it's even stronger. There are a few people in the Liberal Party who actually speak up. But the majority of people, they say, dear, if you want to be pre-selected and keep your job in the Parliament, you will vote this way next week. That's what you do.
Yeah.
And that's why there's so little dissent within the Parliament. And so what happens now, to answer that other question from, I think it was
Jesse?
Bill Hilly.
Yeah.
Bill Hilly, yeah. About the
It's
state.
confusing. Yeah.
He's actually correct. It is supposed to be a state's house, and we're supposed to be voting for Queensland. So with Pauline and I, that's no problem. We vote for what's in the best interest of their state and the country. But the others vote along party lines. And so they will go against their own state. Now, coming back to this question about the Greens are vile. And so what we need to do to wake them up, it's typical control freak tactics. They put lovely policies out there wrapped in emotion. But if you look underneath the policies, they're crap. They're absolutely destructive. They're anti-human. And I mean that. The Greens are anti-human and anti-environment. And so what we've got to do is get past the emotion.
The things they claim to be for. Sorry.
Yeah, get past the emotion and look at what they're really, really doing. And the Greens are just taking UN policies and implementing them in our country. That's all they're doing. And then the Labor Party follows the Greens to make sure the Greens don't get too many votes. And then the Liberal Party follows the Labor Party to make sure they don't get too many of their votes. And so what we're doing is to seeing the Greens and the Labor Party and the Liberal Party, National Party, implementing UN policies. And so what we need to do is vote for people who will work for the state and work for the country. That's all you've got to do. Until we do that, we will keep getting the same old crap dished up to us. We'll keep getting parliaments that work for the parties, not the people. We've got to change the parliaments. That means changing how we vote. Vote for minor parties.
Absolutely.
Vote for minor parties and independents.
Minor parties, absolutely. People always say, dear, who should I vote for? I'm like, only smaller parties. And I always tell them my favorites. And then they're like, okay, good. And then they're like, well, I'll just trust you. And I'm like, no, do your own research.
Yes, do your own research.
Yes, but these are the ones that I trust. Genesis Gmail, a new viewer. Thank you for jumping on today. Genesis Gmail asks, looks like the government are thinking about using Dominion voting machines for electronic voting. Voter fraud coming for Australia? Question mark.
I can't see how they can, other than in the Senate. The only area that's amenable to that electronic voting is the Senate. We're chasing people in the Australian Electoral Commission there. We've held them accountable. We've exposed that they're misrepresenting reality. So we're chasing that. We're introducing a bill in 2 weeks' time in the Senate that's about election integrity. It has two main aspects to it. The first one is that we're going to have audits of the election process before the election and audits of the the process and the voting results after the election. And the second one is, I mean, this is basic. A second one is voter ID, so that they can't vote twice, so they can't vote many times. At the moment, it's difficult for the same person to vote twice, but we have dead people voting for the Labor Party. We have people on what do you call it? Vacant blocks of land voting for the Labor Party. This is known in New South Wales. It's known all over the state and all over the country. And so we want to tidy that up because I think there's going to be quite a bit of problems if people find the government is rigged next time, because people are saying, we've had enough of this. We can't put up with this stupid government anymore. Lockdowns, forced vaccinations. This is wrong. And so, and you see so many contradictions. You see contradictions within Queensland, contradictions within New South Wales from day to day in their virus so-called plan, what they're doing. Early on, they said masks, don't worry about them because you can't get masks. Don't worry about them. They don't do anything. Now they're saying, got to wear masks everywhere. Well, what's the truth? The truth is masks are not effective. But
They're
anyway.
I did a whole video on it. I couldn't put it up on YouTube, so I had to put it on my BitChute account. I'll send it to you if you want to share it. It's pretty good.
And then you see New South Wales contradicting Victoria, Victoria contradicting South Australia, South Australia contradicting Queensland, the federal government contradicting everyone. And then you see, instead of unity and leadership, you see coercion and pushing. You see blame, each party in each state shooting the other parties in the other states. This is a recipe for disaster, and that's exactly what we've had. We've had 18 months of mismanagement since the virus arrived here. And our country is now in a very poor state compared to when the virus arrived. And so what we've got to do, dear, it's fundamental. I've had to lead businesses and introduce some pretty groundbreaking innovations. But in leadership, you paint a vision. You listen to people, first of all, find out their needs. Then you paint a vision of what's needed. And then you convey that to people. And you get people to be inspired and you draw people. That's leadership, where you take people with you. Forcing and coercion and bullying is where you say, do this or else. Do this or I'll take your livelihood away. And that's all that's going on with this virus thing. The virus management is mismanagement, and it's using not leadership. It's using coercion, bullying, intimidation, threats. That's all it's doing. And they've stolen basic human rights. They've stolen basic freedom. And now they're saying, dear, if you get an injection, we'll give you some of these back. And then after you get the injection, they say, well, hang on, we've changed the goalpost. Maybe you'll get it back.
That's exactly that you've described the last year and a half. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's not leadership. That's bullying. And it's happening from the state and federal governments, both the Liberal Party governments and the Labor Party governments.
Yes, you're so right. Lulu Spears, who was behind the Hilton bombing, and how are you going to hold these bastards accountable? Is that to you, or is that to someone else in the chat? I don't know what she's talking about. Do you know what she's talking about?
Yeah, the Hilton bombing occurred back in Malcolm Fraser's prime ministership, which was 1975-83. So a long time ago. I don't think there'd be any way of holding them accountable now. They had an inquiry of sorts into it. I can't comment on whether that inquiry was genuine or not, but
fair enough.
Yeah, that's something that just have to be let go, I'd say.
Fair enough.
There's so many other pressing issues right now.
For sure. Dom has another question. Today, I exited the train to be met swiftly with 2 New South Wales police. Excuse me, sir, where's your mask? After showing them my exemption, this officer then shrugged and said, but how do I know you are Dominic? Oh my gosh, really, Dom? That's annoying. Dominic has a lot of trouble. I noticed that he's constantly posting things on Instagram where people just seem to dismiss him. It's quite amusing, but also quite frustrating.
Yeah. One of the things that you'll notice in a totalitarian dictatorship is that a lot of people, some people, then want to take on control themselves.
Yeah, cops love this new authority that they have.
There's a simple, some of the cops do.
Yes, that's why Victoria, I said many.
You can see absolute thugs. I would disagree that it's many, but it brings out the worst in people. But if you look at Qantas compared to Virgin, all right, Qantas is run by Alan Joyce, and Alan Joyce has done decisions that many people dislike.
Yes,
Okay.
rightfully so.
Yes, and he's talked about vaccine. I'll call them what I don't like calling them, vaccine passports. They're not vaccine passports. They're digital prisons. They're
Prisons.
injection prisons.
I've seen your
Because
interviews. Yes,
they
prisons.
withhold services from people. That's a prison.
Mm-hmm.
They withhold you from your community. That's a prison. You pay as taxpayers. We pay for services and pay to be part of our community and interact with our community through the economy. They
Malcolm
withhold all of
Roberts,
that in prison.
I haven't been able to get my regrowth done. Prison.
So what you see with Qantas, Virgin and Qantas have to enforce make sure that people comply with the mask ruling. I don't know where that comes from. Okay, so I don't like the mask, but I wear them because I'm a lawmaker and being in Parliament, so I have to then show the example. But I work at changing those laws. Okay, so I don't just put up with it. I work at changing them, but I've got to live with them. So anyway, on Virgin, they will walk up to you and say, "Sir, can you put your mask back on? You've finished your meal." Oh, sure, no problem. They don't know who I am, and everyone else, they do the same thing. So that's fine by me. Qantas, they'll say, "Put your mask on."
Oh,
okay. I'm drinking a cup of tea. Put your mask on. You can only have the mask off between sips. While you're sipping. Between sips, you put the mask back on. I'm going, what the hell is this? But there's no point in arguing. So I just comply with it and go ahead. It's not a huge fight for me. So, but I mean, it changes the subtle culture. Now, Qantas, when I first flew overseas, I was extremely proud of Qantas. That was back in 1979. I mean, the service was wonderful. And Qantas has been pretty good for a long time under, what was James Strong, Sir James Strong. Okay. He was a fabulous leader. Qantas really blossomed. Under Alan Joyce, it's becoming a tin pot dictatorship that has low respect for people. And yet the same staff, the same wonderful staff are there in many instances, but that culture has changed and their values have changed. And so Virgin, to me, almost always is friendlier and much more accommodating and much more courteous, much more respectful, and have a lot of fun. You know, they can smile while they're telling you to do things. Qantas, some of the people now are surly because that's the way they have been treated by their management. It's not their fault. I get it.
Yeah, that's completely understandable. There was a question by Stephen Pratt, but I took it down just because of YouTube and their stuff. So I'm just going to read it from the side here. Hello, Senator Roberts. What will it take to finally unveil to the public the suppression order of the 28 high-profile kiddie fiddlers the Senator Heffernan mentions in 2015? Keep up the good work. I said kiddie fiddlers. That's obviously not the word he used. I'm sure you know what the word he used, but yeah.
Yeah. Now, there are many things on the internet that are true, and there are many things that are not true. There's a bill about defense forces coming to this country. That is not true. What we have got is people coming to this country. There was a bill introduced. We scrutinized every word of it, and I'm very proud to have supported it. As a result of the bushfires, for example, that occurred in the end of 2019, there were foreigners who came here, and they could have been sued if they'd made a mistake. You can't expect volunteers to come here from other countries or even paid members of defense forces to come here without their weapons and be threatened with lawsuits for doing a job to protect someone. For example, they might be backburning to stop a fire coming, and that backburning might accidentally take out a house. They can get sued. So this law protects them. It also makes sure they're indemnified if they get hurt or killed. All right. So it's about protection. Some people have not read the damn bill and are saying that that's about bringing foreign troops here to control us. Complete bullshit. There are so many things
alleviates a lot of stress, I think, for so many people who don't read it. Yeah.
Now, on the other hand, there was a bill that went through the Parliament last 2 weeks of August. First 2 weeks of August, that was about giving the Australian Federal Police stronger powers to go into people's computer systems.
Yes, actually, that's absolutely true.
We were against that, completely against that, and I spoke strongly in the Senate against that. Now, so far as this suppression order is concerned, I have a very strong lawyer in my team. We have investigated this. There is no such thing as a suppression order. I'll be putting out more in detail. This is a very sensitive topic, so I want to make sure that it's covered completely and comprehensively. Otherwise, there'll be people arguing about it all the time needlessly. There is no suppression order. The evidence, so-called evidence, does not stack up. We know that for a fact.
Okay.
There's no point in me reading it because I don't understand the legalities. But a lawyer read it, a very competent lawyer, and the evidence doesn't stack up. So that's one that you put on the side of it doesn't stack up. So be very careful what you do with the internet and what you hear over the internet. Things get exaggerated; they get a life of their own. But we'll be putting out much more on that. I promised I would, and we'll do that. At the moment, I'm a bit consumed with this COVID mess and the climate change, but we will be putting out a summary on what we found there.
Okay. This isn't a question, but I thought I'd put it up. My friend Jesse, the moderator, the former soldier, we have an ADF of 50,000 full-time and 30,000 part-time. We have never been capable of defending ourselves without help, so we go to war for our protectors. It's just a statement he's making, but do you want to...
That's a very, very important and accurate comment on some occasions. But Jesse, the most important thing that we have is our culture and our beliefs and our values. And if we go into war in another country and invade another country without the right motive, then we are being the aggressors. So we have to be very, very careful. And all I'm saying is we need to be careful that we assess each case on its merits. I'm not saying never do it, but I'm saying that we need to be very, very careful whenever we commit our men and women to armed conflict overseas. Very, very confident. And we have to have, and this doesn't happen, we must have a plan for what we're doing, what are the objectives we want to achieve, and then how do we get out of that properly. Look at Afghanistan. How much did we set that country back? We basically turfed the Taliban out, we brought them back in. And look at the way that Joe Biden abandoned that country. So we've got to think about these things.
Joe Biden has no morals.
No, he doesn't. I don't think he has much sense either. But I don't think Joe Biden's running the
I don't
country.
think he makes sense. No, it's Kamala Harris and the globalists.
No, I think it's the globalists. Yeah.
Yeah. What happens if China invades and Dan sold Victoria to them? Lulu Spears.
Well, right now, as a result of a lot of pushing by us in the Senate, the government introduced a bill to have oversight over things like that. So the federal government can rightly revoke an agreement or a deal or a treaty that has been done by the states or by a university.
Oh, thank Christ.
What we have to be very, very careful of is that the federal government sometimes does these things.
Yeah.
We have the Timor Sea above us and a lot of islands up there. And there's been work being done by our CSIRO, the Commonwealth Scientific and Industry Research Organization, which does our science work for us, jointly with the Chinese on understanding that area. So we asked questions about that in Senate estimates, said, what the hell are you doing with the country that looks like it'll be our major enemy? Oh, no, we don't do that. We don't do that. And then bit by bit, we're now finding out it does do that. And so here's the federal government agency doing exactly that, selling out our country.
Yeah.
We have to be on the guard all the time.
We do have to be on guard. Do you think this wouldn't happen? In 1970, I think it was Whitlam who removed the powers of the governor general, and there was a governor above a premier. If we still had governors to sort of put people in line, to put the premiers in line of each state, we wouldn't have this problem, right? But the governor is now just a ceremonial role. It's not, they don't have any real... Do you agree with what I'm saying, or am I wrong? Amended.
No, the governor still has power. The
really?
reality is, we have constitutional monarchy in this country, and the states have a similar system. So ultimately, the governor general is appointed by the Queen, but it's in. They
don't seem to do anything. Yes.
Well, they do, because I used to be very much in favor of a republic. But after I almost voted for Malcolm Turnbull's republic, and I listened before that to the High Court judge at a presentation here in Brisbane, and two other High Court judges and the Chief Justice. And I realized what Malcolm Turnbull was doing was very, very destructive. I'm now very strongly a constitutional monarch. monarchist rather. I'm not
I
a
am as well.
monarchist.
I knew what you meant.
It is a fabulous system of government. The reality is that Governor General is there as a final check. That's all. And so, no, it's definitely the best way to go. And the moment we start fiddling with our constitution, we'll have all kinds of vested interests going in there and trying to fiddle with it. We can't afford to do that. Our constitution is very good. Leave the damn thing alone.
But we don't run on the annotated 1901 Constitution. We run on a diluted, shitty version of the Constitution.
No, we run on the 1901 Constitution. I've had a lawyer check that one out too. Yep.
Are you sure? Okay.
Yep.
Well, then that means I've been spreading misinformation without realizing it. Okay.
Yep.
So this question, I think this is a fake account. I think this is a person who is mocking my friend Jessie. I'm not sure. But who runs the banks? I think I know what they want you to say, but I think the simple answer is globalists.
Yeah, that is the simple answer. Yeah, I don't need to say much more, other than to say that the banks run the government. You watch both the Labor Party and the Liberal Party both combine to push some bills through. Now, when it came to the people are aware of a bank bailout. That's where if the banks get into trouble, rather than letting them collapse and take their depositors down with them, the government gives the banks a loan.
Okay.
So that's really the taxpayers giving the banks a loan. So what we're doing is the banks, when times are good and make good profits, they're capitalists. When times are bad and they make bad decisions, greedy decisions that have overextended themselves, and they make losses, they want to be socialists, and the government bail them out. You can't have it both ways. So that's how much power they have. So instead of a bailout, we're increasingly seeing bail-ins around the world, bail-in provisions. In a bail-in provision, the bank says, oh, we're about to go under. So what we'll do is we're going to exchange our shares. We're going to give you some shares to the depositor, and the depositor will give us the cash out of their deposit. But we don't want to do that. Tough, you're going to do it under bail-in provisions. So they can take your deposits like that and give you worthless pieces of paper in return. That was on the books, the bail-in legislation in 2017. Pauline and I were against it, but it went through. We recently introduced in our party in federal parliament earlier this year an anti-bail-in provision to remove that. All it needed was 2 words changed and it removed. The Liberal Party and the Labor Party ganged up to vote against it, to give that provision still to the banks.
Assholes. Oh, sorry. I don't usually swear. It made me angry.
Well, no, you're right.
The
same stuff comes out of them. So then there was also the cash ban bill that was introduced by the government. In the lower house, it got Labor Party support. We put up such a song and dance about it that even some Liberal branches got upset about it and put pressure on the Liberals, that when it got to the Senate, it was sent to a committee. And then eventually we moved a motion saying, get rid of the bill right off the Senate books. And that's what happened. If it hadn't been for us, the cash ban would have been there. And the cash ban was to give banks more power. So who runs the banks? The globalists run the banks. Who do they run it for? The globalists benefit. And who do they control? They control the government. There's no doubt about that whatsoever. If you look at what's happened,
I think the question was an attempt at trying to get you to say the small-hatted people, but I'm guessing I could be wrong.
I've never seen any evidence for that, and I've been into the banks a fair bit.
Fair enough. I think, to be honest, I did a documentary some time ago, and the small-hatted people, black people, Latino people, white people, the globalists is a mix of different morons of different races.
Nailed it. Exactly. All we know is that they're greedy and that they're control freaks, which means always beneath control there is fear. They're afraid of losing what they have.
I would argue, actually, as a moral conspiracy type of a thing, that it's the line of Cain. All the globalists are somehow related to the line of Cain, but that's just me being silly.
Well, I'd say to you, show me the evidence.
Exactly, because I don't have it. That's just a theory I'm running on. Yeah. Okay, a few more questions, guys, because this was meant to be 1 hour, and I've taken poor Malcolm beyond that. I'm so sorry. I actually only realized now that we've gone beyond the hour. Yeah, they are good questions. Lulu, again, someone sent me, China is ready to invade Taiwan, and they want to invade us too, Oh, she's talking to someone else. I actually don't think this is for you. But Sydney has 50,000 Chinese students here. What could possibly go wrong? Well, they're just students. They're not.
Well, but
What's the evidence that some of them are dangerous?
The Chinese, if you go to Cooktown, which is in far north Queensland, you'll see a memorial to the gold rushes right on the foreshore of Cooktown. And there are gold diggers there, there are storemen there, and there are Chinamen there. And the Chinese were part of that settling of northern Queensland. The Chinese have been wonderful. The Chinese citizens. Notice I'm talking about Chinese citizens, not the
CCP.
Communist Party of China. Thank you.
Yeah.
The
Don't
Chinese
worry, I know the
citizens,
distinction.
Yeah, the Chinese citizens are wonderful. They've contributed so much to our country. They still do. Then, amongst some of the Chinese, there are the mainland Chinese who've come from the Communist Party dominated area, and the others who've come from Taiwan, who are very industrious and very peaceful. And some of the Chinese Communist Party, the people who've come from Chinese Communist Party, they are working for the party still. There's no doubt about that. The Chinese people tell me that themselves. And so we have to be very, very careful. Some of the students here are down here looking and reporting back. So there's no doubt about that. But that's the same with every country. There'll be American spies here. There'll be Russian spies here. There'll be British spies here. And that's the way society has been for a long, long time. So we have to be very, very careful. We have to be very smart about it. What we're doing is the University of Queensland, which is one of the universities I went to, has got into such a state because it depends upon Chinese students and foreign students for their revenue. And it's now putting in place policies to control some of our own students. That's not acceptable. So we have to be very, very careful about how far we go with any nationality, especially one that can be representing a Communist Party of China. So we have to be very, very careful. Most of the students are wonderful.
Yes, exactly. And as I said earlier, there are a-holes in every group, and there are great people in every group. And then there are boring neutral people in every group. Dom asks, Dia and Malcolm, do you think the current, I can't say that word, inoculation lottery running is going against strict advertising standards? One, the fact this inoculation is only emergency authorized and is not safe or effective. You can answer. Go ahead.
You're exactly correct, Dom. I agree with you. The vaccine has been given provisional approval only. That means it has not been tested in this country. It has not completed many of its tests in the United States. It relies upon a manufacturer's statement and claim. And in that statement, they say that the actual results may differ from what they propose or what they forecast or project. So the health minister himself, Greg Hunt, said, the world is engaged in the largest clinical vaccination trial. I'll say it again. The health minister admits the world is engaged in the largest clinical vaccination trial. I believe, and I strongly support medicines that have been tested properly, proven safe, proven effective, preferably affordable, and preferably readily available for everyone. What I go against totally is untested medicines, not properly tested medicines. Even more strongly, I'm against the threat, the coercion of losing freedom, losing your livelihood, losing the ability to feed your kids unless you get the injection. That is totally wrong. And so I agree with you entirely. What it does is it raises serious questions. If the vaccine manufacturers aren't willing to indemnify people from the side effects and have to rely on the government indemnifying them, what faith do they have in their products? If they have to rely upon coercion, whether that be a threat of losing something, a threat of punishment, losing your job, losing your status, or another form of coercion, which is a lottery, of course that's wrong. But I'm not worried so much about the advertising standards. I think it is, but I can't tell you definitively if it is against the advertising standards. But I can tell you something for sure. It's immoral and it's anti-human. That is quite clear doing these practices. And the Constitution says that the federal government cannot mandate the use of any medication on people, cannot do it. And so the federal government is now going behind the Constitution deceitfully to try and get the states to do it and employers to do it. It's wrong for them to do it as well. And so that was done to steal your property rights when John Howard was the Prime Minister of this country. It went against Constitution, Section 51, Clause 31, just terms compensation, back in 1996 through to 1998, and then on to 2018. All of that stealing of farmers' property rights without compensation went against the law, and it was done deceitfully by the Howard Anderson government in 1996. That's when it started. They've already got form in breaking our Constitution.
Yeah. Also, John Howard was the one who got rid of our guns and let the Asian immigration sort of take over. But I used to think he was great. But all right, Josh Briffer, dear, can you please ask Malcolm what he thinks about the government attempting to amend the Biosecurity Act, and also what he thinks about the rumors about rounding up I guess I can't say that word, the unvaccinated into camps?
Well, I've been working on holding the government accountable on the virus and the mismanagement of the virus. So I can't tell you too much about the biosecurity, but something that my wife told me about today, and I'll be getting, we have, Pauline and I have members of staff who are given the task of looking into each of the bills. And so what I've already heard scares me. Now,
oh yeah, Josh, also you can go to australia1.com and then there's a bills section. They've already reviewed all the bills, Josh. Sorry, keep going.
Good on you. So we'll be doing that next week. We'll be reviewing that.
Good.
But we are very concerned at the moment. But as I said before, you've got to be careful what comes on the internet. So I'll do it with my own eyes before.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Now, rounding up the unvaccinated into camps. You know, if someone had said that to a German, rounding up Jewish people in 1930s, people would have laughed.
Yeah.
Now, if you'd mentioned 18 months ago, even 12 months ago, some of the things that have been done to us in this country in the last 12 months, you wouldn't have believed it 12 months ago. If you look at some of the things that have been done by the globalists, you wouldn't believe it. If you'd have told me what I know now 10 years ago, I would have laughed at you. But now I know they're fact. So I never put anything as too evil for some humans to do. And sometimes it's even worse because those evil humans are not trying to be evil. They think they're honestly doing the right thing. So it's entirely reasonable, but I haven't heard anything about rounding up the unvaccinated into camps. But I'm not ruling anything out because we've had so much crazy rubbish come through this country, state and federal governments, because the voters don't hold the parliaments accountable. We're getting what we deserve because voters have been apathetic.
Yeah. A few more questions, guys. I feel really bad that he's still here with us. Jesse Bell again. To clarify, sir, with the amount of subversives we have in the populace, do you think we are able to come together harmoniously in concert for a better Australia? A concert? Oh, yeah, concert.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we're not going to have a gig. Yeah, I do, Jesse. I honestly do.
It's really the same question I already asked twice.
We've got that ability to do it in us. Humans like to belong. Humans like to cooperate. It's a matter now of making sure that our values are repeated and redefined, not redefined as in changing them, but restated. And so that people understand what our culture is about, what our laws are about. You know, in our schools, we no longer teach the Constitution. So people don't know what the law is, what the basic law is. We no longer teach the history. So people who have learned history understand that what we're seeing in the last 12 months has happened before throughout history, many, many times. This is not new.
Many times.
And what they want us to do is to be asleep in school so that we can be asleep as citizens, and then we just go and vote for the good old Liberal Labor Party, and that's it. Just give us both sides that pretend to argue, but when push comes to shove and important bills come through, they vote together and sweep them through. So we've got to get more representatives in Parliament from the smaller parties, from the minor parties, and more independents. So yes, I believe we can come together, but we've got to start educating people, and that starts with self-education. I'd also say that. Yep.
Go. No, go.
It also starts with recognizing that we've been fed crap all our lives. We've been taught curriculums at school. We've been taught curriculums in the media, which is owned for the most part. Look at Sky News. I canceled my subscription to Sky News. It's become a vaccination propaganda machine. 2GB is the same. They're telling people, go out and get it. But what we've got to be careful, what we've got to be mindful of is that we have been under this bullshit for so many decades. And so many kids have been taught all through their childhood and their early adolescence that humans are evil, humans are greedy, humans are irresponsible, humans are uncaring. The reverse is the truth. Dia, you wouldn't be here if someone hadn't cared for you. You know, when a foal is born out of a horse, it lies on the ground for a little couple of minutes. Then it starts getting up edgily. Then it starts getting awkwardly around. And within minutes, it's cantering. Humans are completely defenseless for years. And so we need someone to care for us. What that means is that the humans that survived came from parents who had very strong care genes. So they survived. And so that care gene gets passed. That's why humans are very caring. But we go back to the talk about the ego in the early part. We also, each of us, have that ego which can derail us. So we have to be mindful. It's an internal battle between control and freedom the whole time. You have to be mindful of that. Now, these globalists are similarly conflicted internally. They think Al Gore, for example, is making a hell of a lot of money out of that global warming scam. He set it up to do that. But a lot of people think that he's doing it for the planet. Bullshit he is. He's a crook. He is a flat-out crook. And he's put in place a carbon dioxide tax in this country, and then that was removed, and that was put back again by Greg Hunt and by Malcolm Turnbull in 2015. And Greg Hunt, for people who don't know, was working for the World Economic Forum on strategy for 2 years, 2000 and 2001.
And what about Klaus Schwab? Klaus Schwab said, we won't own anything, but we'll be happy. What a piss off. What? What a ridiculous statement. Go away. Why is he even in the picture? I never even knew the guy's name until last year. I'm like,
and who voted for him?
I don't know. No idea. But his mother is a Rothschild.
Does not surprise. Does not surprise.
Okay, Malcolm, why was the Senate live feed cut when the Senate division on the bill? I've read the bill.
Which bill?
I don't really know what he's talking about. The Senate live feed. So there was some sort of a live feed that must have happened case or something. The Senate live feed cut when the Senate division on the bill. I don't know. It's not written properly. I think that's all right. Let's keep going down.
Was this perhaps there's a really simple answer here? Was that bill? Was that during?
I've read the bill. I have a North Shore Sydney education. Oh, I thought he was clarifying what he was talking about.
No. Was that during one of the remote sittings in the last 18 months? Because they've had technical glitches in the last 18 months at times. I've not seen too much in the way of deliberate misrepresentation. There was one time in Hansard when I was badly misquoted, and we concluded that it was deliberate, but they corrected it anyway. So, but I think the parliamentary staff in Canberra are just fabulous. They're really, really competent people.
Yeah, that's good. Enmity, is the human biosecurity emergency, human coronavirus with pandemic potential declaration 2020 still in force? The legislation in force right now it states it ended on the 17th of the 9th, 2021.
Well, we get so much coming through us that I don't know whether you're talking state or federal, so maybe I have to explain that. I do know, for example, that the state emergency declaration in Queensland has been extended 6 times. Emergency declarations are meant for short-term emergencies. That's it.
Yet they keep extending them.
That's right. They should not be doing that. And they're doing it so that they can get any order through. It's crap. And so that's what we're tackling the government about. Okay,
Danielle Andrews, I think this is his sister. Does anyone know why PNG is less than 1% inoculated, yet here we are trying to triple shot healthy people? Don't they need the inoculation over there?
This is a pretty simple question. They found in Israel, which is the most vaccinated country in the world.
90%.
So, I mean,
Yeah.
Gibraltar and Seychelles are more vaccinated, but not 80 to 90% in Israel, double shot. They have a huge increase in the number of cases, a huge increase in the number of hospitalizations, and maybe intensive care unit as well, beds taken up. That's from a population that's vaccinated with the Pfizer vaccine. Now, Pfizer and the Israelis are admitting that the Pfizer vaccine efficacy, the effectiveness of it, drops off, sometimes in just a couple of months, but certainly after 4 months. So now Pfizer is making application to have a third booster shot. The Israelis are already starting to inject people for the third booster shot.
They're pin cushions.
They're now talking about a fourth booster shot, dear.
I know.
In addition, the Israelis, it was just reported yesterday in the news that the Israelis have revoked their digital passports. I call them digital prisons. They're prisons, really. They withhold services from taxpayers. Oh, by the way, if you withhold a service from a taxpayer, does that mean they should get a tax refund?
Please.
Yeah. So the Israelis have changed the goalpost now, and they're now saying you won't get your vaccine passport back, your digital prison back, until you've had your third shot. So can you see the racket that's going on here? This is wonderful for Pfizer. Pfizer's talking now about getting it revenues of $43.5 billion a year off this injection. And what they'll do, they put them on a subscription service. So
yeah,
now and then they roll other things into it as well. So they've already these are things that have already been talked about.
Okay. Oops, give me a second. Okay, let me go down. Any more? Okay, I'm gonna read maybe 2-3 more questions, guys, and then let Malcolm eat dinner and spend time with the family. Pat the dog. Josh Briffa again. Dear, can you please ask? I think that's the same question as before. So hang on, let me go down. He's just rewritten it.
Yeah, that is the same. Yep.
Yeah, sorry about that.
I'm sorry about my scruffy appearance too. I don't know if I apologize for that because I just had a
you did off camera, but you look fine. Did you have that done recently then?
8 days ago.
Oh wow. Well, I'm glad the cancer is out. That's a good thing. All right, let's go down. Actually, the other
Parliament.
Of course, yeah. I don't see anything here. No, there are no more questions, I don't think. Just people discussing stuff in the chats. I got, actually, it's not a question, but someone wrote, hang on, if I put it up. This dude rules. It's talking about you. Hey, Roots Calhoun, haven't seen you in a while. That's funny. Okay, good. Here's a question. This is my friend, PC Leaks Pete. Hi, Senator Roberts. What is your view on the Disrupt and Identify bill that allows authorities to change details without consent? And also, there are things called deep fakes now. There's this video of Tom Cruise on TikTok. It's not Tom Cruise on TikTok, but it's Tom Cruise on TikTok. It's crazy. So, like, people can really do that deep fake stuff. So, yeah, sorry, I'll let you answer PC Leaks Pete's question.
Yeah, we were totally opposed to that, Pauline and I. I spoke against it in the Senate on the on that bill.
You did mention that earlier.
It's wrong.
Yeah.
It's completely wrong. Gives authorities too much power and not enough control over that power, not enough oversight over that power.
Charlie Oscarlini, hello, new viewer for me. Can you please tell us, Malcolm, what you know about the New World Order?
Yes, it was created back in 1992 under the control of Morris Strong, who was a crook from America. He was very high in the UN. He was an absolute amazing networker, a brilliant brain, but crooked and corrupt and evil. He created it as a way of putting in place, as we said earlier tonight, two things. One is to put in place an unelected socialist global government, and without any voting, unelected. And secondly, to deindustrialize Western civilization. What it's about is about control. Everything that the UN does is about control. It has three main arms. First of all, it's about getting control of the economies of countries and the contributing factors like energy prices, water availability, property rights, basic things in our civilization that are essential for responsibility, and getting control of them and then using them against the people and controlling people. It relies on something called sustainability. The UN sustainability, though, is bullshit. It is only sustainable with subsidies, which means it isn't sustainable. So what they're doing there is that they're making rules and regulations to control what you eat, how you live, how you travel, how you educate, so many things about your life. Then the next part of it is biodiversity. Lovely words. Again, who would go against biodiversity? But biodiversity is their way of saying that fungus over there in the corner of your block, sorry, we've got to resume your land because that fungus has to be protected. It's about stealing your property rights. The third one is climate change, because that carbon dioxide you're exhaling now, dear, is going to affect someone on the other side of the Pacific Ocean. So we've got to stop you exhaling carbon dioxide. But we're not going to do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to stop it coming out of your cars, coming out of your power stations, coming out of your cattle, coming out of anything that you use energy with. So that is controlling our energy. It's also there so that they can levy a tax, because you'll notice with these things, you can do them so long as you pay for it. And so they want to levy a tax on you. And that tax goes to the UN to run its budget, because the UN doesn't have a budget other than what it gets in donations from various countries around the world. And Trump was wonderful. He said that he would defund the World Health Organization.
He said did say that. He said it.
Yeah, he did it. Biden's brought it back. So we've got to be. It's all about control and money. That's it.
Yeah. I'm going to make this the last question, because I just think it's been over 2 hours and I feel bad for you. Why did David Shoebridge cross the road to the PM's house? Oh, it's a joke?
Yeah.
The PM's house at the Krillbilly to get to the paddy wagon on the other side. Well, there you go.
Good one, Red.
No, I'll put one more question on, because but that's actually, it's not a bad way to end on a joke. Last question, guys. I won't be reading anymore. As a Christian and politician, do you see this all lining up with end time prophecy?
What's end time prophecy?
I think he means the book of Revelations.
Oh, okay. No, I think this is just lining up with so much of what Jesus taught. It's everything in life is an opportunity to learn about ourselves. Everything in life is an opportunity to learn about the way the world works and how we treat it. Do we forgive it or do we fight it? And even if we fight it, how are we going to fight it? Are we going to fight it with respectfully, honestly, dignity, strongly, or are we going to try and control people? Buddha taught that basically you need to be aware of these things within us and equanimous to what's happening. So that doesn't mean let it go, because Buddha also advocated the protective use of force. But you do that with very deep consciousness about the energy you're bringing. So if I need to stop you doing something, dear, and I use a punitive force, that's going to eventually hurt me. It's certainly going to hurt you, but it's going to hurt me. But if I do it with the honest desire to protect and to lovingly to protect and to make sure that people are safe, then it will help.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm laughing at something someone's written. It's not to you. It's someone being an idiot.
Oh, he didn't really mean that this dude rocks. He was just trying to get to you. That's all.
It seems like it. But
first time I've been in a vehicle for someone to get to a gorgeous woman.
Oh, thank you. No, I've really enjoyed today's discussion. I really thank you so much for participating in this live stream. You've definitely given us a lot to think about and given us some insights that maybe we didn't have sooner. Everyone, I've left the links in the description box below. So if you want to support Senator Malcolm Roberts, you can. I've given his website and his, I think, Facebook page I've added below. So, did you have any final thoughts?
No, just one, and that is that it's very important you do what you're doing. The legacy media, and I mean that sincerely, the legacy media has sold out. It's been controlled by the globalists quite often for 150, 160 years in the United States. It's dominated. So people have not got the clean news, the uncensored news. The social media has turned into a censorship machine as well. And so the only media we've got left that is open and genuine and honest is what I call the independent media, the truth media.
I call it alt, but I got you.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. And there are some like, what's the name of it? Yemeni. Oh,
Who are you thinking of?
No, Avi Yemeni, and Rushkin, the real Rukshan rather. These people. So please support them. Please support Dia, and please support any other independent podcasters, because that's the only way we're going to share the accurate information around the country.
Oh, I appreciate that. Yeah, we need to be supporting and sharing each other's work. That's for sure.
And next time I'll have a shave.
No, you look wonderful. Don't be silly. Well, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Please tune in next week. I have another awesome interview ready for you guys. And remember to pray for your enemies. Okay, guys, I'm ending the broadcast. Give me a second.